Welcome back to another edition of RecTalk, UK's #1 recruitment podcast based on metrics such as listen times, views, and subscribers on YouTube. So thank you very much. You know, I'm in a new studio today. We even have two cameras. Here we go. I'll wave on this one because it's like that one's on you. We're in a new studio. We've decided to level up, and that's all down to the amazing kind of work done behind the scenes, but also by our sponsors who have helped us be able to kind of step up as a channel. So thank you guys very much. Thank you all for listening, watching, subscribing, liking, sharing, and all the good stuff that you guys do to help this channel grow. As you know, RecTalk is brought to you by RecTools, which I am the founder and CEO of. RecTools is the UK's only, the world's actually only whole of market directory of all suppliers into your recruitment business. So if you, like my guest, run a recruitment business and you're looking for a new umbrella company for your temp contractors, maybe you're looking for a new CRM, maybe you're looking for a new website or a new marketing business, or maybe you just want to find out about what cool, trendy new tech is out there, head over to rectools.io. You'll see the RecTools recommended products on our front page, and then the rest of the directory is somewhere on the site. That was a big, long intro. Apologies, but I thought it was important to do so. Right. So, look, my guest today is John Smith of ARG, also known as the Accountancy Recruitment Group. John is a veteran of the recruitment industry, despite the fact that you look 20 years younger than me. Coming up to, 17 years in the industry. Formerly, I'll let him do an introduction of his background, but formerly a kind of a recruiter, worked up to senior, to managing consultant, principal consultant, and then up to director of a well-known established recruitment agency before setting off on his own in around 2017, which ironically is the same time that I set up my recruitment business. And we were talking off camera while we grabbed a beer about the parallels or not of what we did versus what they've done as a business. And it's funny to see that actually in almost exactly the same time frame, I ended up growing, scaling and failing my recruitment agency while you guys are bucking the trend and doing exceptionally well. So looking forward to kind of unpicking that today. But first of all, mate, thank you very much for giving us your time and coming over to Coventry in this lovely new studio.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for the invitation.
That's me done talking now. It's all you.
Good stuff. Over to me. No, exactly. Potted history is as you described, really. So pretty typical. Went through the meritocracy of grad recruiter into leading teams, leading divisions, became MD of a business that had then become a PLC, and did about 3 or 4 years in that spot, and then took the plunge and launched in 7.5 years ago.
Amazing.
So, yeah.
Okay. First of all, how have you found the last 12 months?
I think the last 12 months has definitely been a market shift. It's got a little bit tighter, I would say, in terms of job flow. Holistically across whole of the market is probably slightly lower. And if you look at the metrics around advertised roles through the main job boards and all that type of stuff, I think holistically people would say it's took maybe a 15-20% drop, job volume. And I think candidate market, whole of market is probably slightly looser, certainly in our finance space. So again, you're probably looking at maybe an equivalent 15-20% uplift in general candidate appetite to move. And then I would caveat all that data with there's a real spectrum of some businesses that seem to be really struggling, and then others that are kind of saying, no, do you know what, we're trading pretty well and it's business as usual or better.
What about you guys? How you found it?
Yeah, I would say we're there. So we've had a really solid year. We had a cracking H1 on the back of a really strong H2 last year. So we've just kind of continued that trend. So anecdotally, we're a team of 6, so it is anecdotal data, but we've had a really solid 36 months, and I don't think we've necessarily seen this real ebb flow that some of the other businesses might have experienced.
What would you put that down to then? Because that really is bucking the trend.
Yeah, and there isn't. I wouldn't say there's necessarily one. Like we talked before about, there isn't one lever, one string that you can pull that becomes a hack. It's easy to say, but I think part of that is just doing the right things super consistently, and kind of not looking to blame, macro factors on what's this quarter looking like. If we're having a tough month, we're having a tough month. What we're doing about it.
Okay.
And if we're having a boom, not trying to exploit it by throwing things at the wall, throwing graduates into the business. Equally, if it's a real downturn, not stripping people out in the business, just doing the right things, whether the market's on or off.
Yeah, because we spoke about that, didn't we? It's almost like the old metric that of kind of in recruitment was, growth equals headcount growth.
Yeah.
And then, you're right. When things are going really well, you start going, let's get some apprentices in, let's get some grads in, let's, split the teams a bit further and so on and so forth. And then when it goes to pot, you're like, right, okay, who are our top performers, who are our least performing people, get a shot of them, start again.
Totally, and you just see it. You see, I've probably seen that repeat now maybe 4 times. It's kind of a 5-year cycle, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where you'll get businesses that want, and I totally get it. They want to take advantage of a really hot market, and so the typical model will be good recruiter gets promoted to manager. They get the budget to bring a couple of junior people in who are greener, and hopefully one or both of them hit the ground running enough to cover their own costs, and rinse repeat until a point in time when job flow dries up, and then you rank stack those people and the bottom 10% get fired. And I think my issue with, I understand it as a model. My issue with it is, I think from a client and candidate perspective, from a customer point of view, every time you do that, I think the outputs get diluted in terms of customer service because people don't have an understanding of the market, the relationships get diluted.
That is that value piece that ends up being missing for the end client, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So talking about, so you said the last 36 months have been, interesting, good, sort of consistent growth or consistent. How much of that would you say you put down to regular repeat business from a client base, or is it a combination of new business, old business? What's the breakdown here? Are you just one of those fortunate ones that happen to land on 5-6 good accounts who constantly are hiring, and therefore you guys were right place, right time? And that's not me throwing shots or taking shade. We did that. We had a 2-year stretch where we just happened to be the right agency at the right time and made a shit ton of money out of these clients until this stopped. And then we're like, now what?
Yeah, definitely. And so my expectation when I set the business up was going to be, I've got a whole host of connections that have used me before, I've got a good relationship with, that I think will prop the business up outside of covenants. The reality that I found was pretty much about 80% of our year 1, year 2 business was people I'd never had a conversation with before, which was, I was really surprised by it, to be honest, pleasantly surprised. And then the last 3 years, I would say it's a real mixed bag. We have got a cluster of really big PLCs that will, there's a constant flow of jobs almost. On the flip side of that, there's a whole host of businesses in the sort of sub 50 mil turnover bracket that don't need that level of job volume, and particularly if they're getting serviced properly, they shouldn't be having to re-recruit their finance controller every 24 months anyway. One thing we tend to find is one job leads to another job, whether that's they recruit another role through us in the next 12 months, or someone in their network we've done a good enough job that they'll refer us in and we get that piece of work. And that's pretty much a consistent stat. Very, very rarely does the book end at the end of a placement and nothing ever comes from it for the next 5 years.
It's funny though, isn't it? Because for a lot of agencies that is the case, and that's the ones that I think get quantified as like a necessary evil. We use them because we had to. Would we recommend them? No. Would we use them again? Hopefully not. You know what I mean? Whereas actually what you're saying is the other side, which is, again, we spoke about this off camera, right? All the research, all the metrics, all the analysis that's out there proves and shows that people buy based on referrals and recommendation more than any other metric or any other method of outreach, including BD and outbound sales and cold calling and so on and so forth. So you guys have actually seen the return version of that then?
I think so. And I think in my experience of being in the industry for that length of time, I think the bar's raised. I think people's expectations of what good looks like from the recruiter service they want is higher, because there's loads of options, the market's super fragmented, there's loads of new competitors, there's loads of old guard brands that everybody knows. So they've got tons and tons of bags of choice. And I think, as you and I talked about earlier, it sounds a bit twee, but the difference is kind of actually caring, did they get a good service or not? So I think some agencies, we filled it, we've got the fee, high five, and it was almost, we don't really care what's in the wake of that placement. I think if you actually care, rightly or wrongly, sometimes I overly care about it, but I think from a positive from that, you're able to then say to the client, we're all good here, aren't we? You're comfortable, I'm comfortable. And then as a result, you get repeat business, because why wouldn't they recommend you? Why wouldn't they come back to you?
I think it's whether you call it kind of sort of pattern disruption or whatever, right? I think the honesty piece is where that's the trend that I'm seeing and hearing from a lot of recruiters that are doing really well. They're always like, we're just honest with our clients. And that sounds so simple to do, but actually when you've got, you know, the bills need paying or your manager's on your back and you've got targets to meet and that kind of thing, you don't want to let a vacancy go or be honest with, you know, your end client. But I mean, I had a situation last month where an old client of mine, we called up for a coffee, we were chatting away, and he was like, why don't you just go back into recruitment? Why don't you just do recruitment again? I don't really want to. It's not. I'm doing what I'm doing. It's pretty fun. Why? He was like, because you were really good. I was like, all right, you know, we made some money out of you and stuff. And he was like, no, you were the only one that was honest. You would ring me and say, I can't find anyone. You used to say to me, listen, maybe try a specialist agency in this space, or maybe you need to reach out to a few more people because I'm not having any luck, or am I doing something wrong here because I don't get, like, you know, I'm not finding the right type of person, and your line manager rejecting the CVs. He goes, we love that because we knew you weren't there trying to force a square peg in a round hole. You would genuinely kind of be like, am I missing the fucking trick here? What's going on? I've sent you 6 CVs and not one of them matched up, so I'm doing something wrong. So maybe I'm not the right person to recruit for this. And he was like, I don't get that. I don't get that from anyone. And that's genuinely surprised me. But, you know, is that an ego thing? Is that I don't know.
Like, look, people have got to die on the hill of honesty, haven't they, nowadays? Because if you're not, you're dead in the market. Yeah. And I think there's an incorrect preconception that recruiters are deliberately dishonest. I think the odd one is a bit of a charlatan, but I think they're the exception. Where I do think there's sometimes a little bit of a fallover is people can only be as honest as they can be. So, for example, if you're 12 months into your career and you've been in your specialist market for that length of time and you're developing some understanding of who's who and what's what and understanding job briefs and understanding the businesses in your network and all that type of stuff, and the client says to you, is that shortlist the best we can get access to? Most of them will say yeah. And it's based upon the fact that they've done their search with the toolkit they've got and the understanding of the market that they've got, and that probably is their best shortlist.
It's the best shortlist I can give you, yeah.
So they are probably being honest. In reality, it's probably a dishonest message because somebody with a bit more experience or with access to
a network resources or whatever might be able to kind of bolster that a bit more.
Exactly. So the honest answer would probably be either, don't know, give me some more time and I'll do a full headhunt to the point that I know we've exhausted it and said, yeah, they categorically are. Or yes, it is. We've done that. We've followed that process. We've been super diligent and thorough, and they're the best that's out there. So we can either hire one or wait, or move the budget or whatever you're going to do.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's many people going around saying like just say yes and con them in inverted commas. So I think it's sometimes I think it's a bit ham-fisted recruitment.
For me, I think a lot of it is down because again, I used to watch my my old business partner training our guys, and I used to find it fascinating that, you know, and he was the better people manager between us, but he would, in that sort of scenario, be like, just tell the client yes.
Yeah.
Not because he's trying to be dishonest, but because he almost didn't kind of see the value in explaining why to the consultant. It was just like the easiest thing for me to do is just to tell you what to say and you'll go off and say it. And I see that a lot with a lot of the sort of the smaller agencies and stuff that I spend time with and do work with. You see that where you've got leaders and managers who won't explain things to the junior recruiters. They just tell them what to say and what to do, because it's like, well, the end result is going to be this, so just say this, you know, without any rhyme or reason. How much time have you guys spent as a business then sort of developing your people, and how much time do you spend kind of explaining almost the rationale behind decision making to your guys?
Yeah, and like again, I don't think that's probably been. It's very rarely like super deliberate. I think often that's down to time. And expectations, pressures of getting money in the till, isn't it? So we've got the luxury because we've been fairly controlled, and you know, some people would say it's. Some people would look at it and go like, look, you could have been more aspirational, and you could have chased a headcount number, or you could have chased a turnover number. And I'm just not cool with it because I think leading back to that, you put some unnecessary pressure on, get people through the door, and then once they're through the door, get them filling jobs, get them in front of people when they're not quite ready and all that type of stuff. So I think to combat that, you've got to kind of go, well, what's realistic in terms of how many headcount can we get to by when? Comfortable with, they're all super trained, they understand the background, so they're saying that, and this is why they're saying that, and this is what that means.
The psychology behind it, the understanding, the rationale, that kind of thing, rather than my boss told me to say this, so I said it. I don't really get why I'm saying it. I'm just saying it.
Yeah, and also it's not about. It shouldn't be that everybody's regurgitating the MDs or the line managers' words either. You got to give people time to go and explore the market.
That happens so often. Like, it's just that's just what we do. That's just what we do. That's just what we say.
Yeah.
But yeah, you mentioned an interesting point, like lack of. Do you have you been told that then, or is that like a almost a ghost from the past where you're like, maybe it's a lack of ambition that you haven't grown past 6 headcount?
Yeah, but I think it might. The honest answer is probably a little bit of my ego talking a bit, perhaps, and going like, "Oh, should I or shouldn't I have?" and all that type of good stuff. It's a really frequent. Every time you meet somebody who works in our industry, if you're in a leadership role or you've got your own business, within 2 conversations they're going, "Okay, how many people you got now?" And it's a real thing that people use as a stick to beat their competitors with and all that type of stuff. So you do hear it a lot, and I'm kind of cool with it. I'm comfortable with it. I'm comfortable that I can, as we talked about earlier, I think we do a really good job. And I don't think necessarily throwing people at the problem necessarily solves the equation any quicker or any better.
Isn't it the equivalent of kind of being like, well, why do you only just live in a 3-bedroom house? Why haven't you got a 4-bedroom? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it kind of feels that, doesn't it? Like, why'd you drive that when you could drive that?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, and it's kind of saying like, do you want to have a Premier League football team with 11 players, but you can play 13 who are non-league?
Yeah.
Like, you just
Yeah.
play the Premier League, wouldn't you? Because one, you're probably going to get the result anyway. But even whatever you get, you're going to get good performance out of them. And I think also sometimes it's unfair when you just plough numbers at it, because going back to that point earlier, when a market does take a dip, you end up sort of throwing people out of the door because you've not given them sufficient training. You're throwing them to the wolves too quickly, and I don't love the morals of that either. And where does it come from? A little bit, at the top of the chain when I worked in the PLC environment, I was managing 5 offices with probably like 35, 40 headcount across the function, and some of those things are unavoidable because you've got headcount pressure from a group PLC, from investors and stakeholders. You've got a share price to be mindful of, and sometimes it's kind of like we have got to go and fill that seat in that region.
But is it then a case that you had already scratched that itch, which is why then, because you have a lot of like, I mean, I got asked the question, right? If you were to do a recruitment business again, would you grow as fast as you did? And I was like, absolutely not, because it's almost like once you've been there and scratched that itch and realise that actually that's no more or less fulfilling, do you know what I mean? Does that then reshape your mindset? So had you not been at MD level, and maybe if you've gone over when you were managing a small team and set up on your own, do you think at that point you probably would have been a bit more quote unquote ambitious and gone, right, we're going to go multiple offices, multiple locations, multiple countries, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think, and I've talked about this before. I think from a personal point of view, I think if you come from a working class background, there was a kind of a message of be a manager, that'll be successful, and the more people you manage, or the bigger the business team that you manage, the happier you'll be. Yeah. And it's kind of, I ran that experiment and got to that point of view, and you look around and go, well, I don't hate it, but I don't go home and not like thoroughly fulfilled. Yeah. Exactly. I wasn't. I didn't love it. It's fundamentally. And I think it gives the opportunity to be able to go like, right, okay, I've had a taste of that. What are the sacrifices you've got to make to get to that point of view versus the reward panel? And is that in kilter and all that type of good stuff? So yeah, probably got luckily to run the experiment underneath someone else's money, getting PAYE at the end of the month. So there's a bit of having been able to do it once is a good experiment. I think the flip side of that coin as well is when you get it right and you've got a small team and you see how many vacancies, for example, you can fill and how good a job you can do, it's quite surprising that you can get, you can get a team of 2 really, 2 super billers can easily outbill 10 bang average consultants. That's the reality of that situation. Yeah,
that's it. The numbers game in recruitment in terms of headcount equals growth was always really driven by, because the more people you have, the more likelihood there is of people billing, in a sort of every 10 billers that you've got, 3 will be basically doing the majority of the billing, and the 7 would really be carried, right? Hence thresholds being as high as they were back in the day and all that sort of stuff. Interesting. Okay, so what's the at what point when you were first setting out and kind of like, okay, I'm going to do this on my own, what was your kind of strategy and plan at that point then? You know, was it to, okay, I'm going to get to a point where, because I hate calling it a lifestyle business because it's absolutely not a lifestyle business. It's a business, and by its own right, it's a successful one, right? But what was the sort of the goal initially, and kind of how far along that journey do you feel you are before you're kind of at a point where you'll be like, I did what I was supposed to do, or what I set out to do?
Yeah. But just on that point, lifestyle business, like I find it quite comedy that it's kind of almost like a dirty word, and I'm not 100% sure I know what it means, because you could have a 100 million turnover business that's still a lifestyle business if you mean that it's not got, for example, it's not got a load of debt or it's not had VC or PE money in it. Is it still a lifestyle business? It's really difficult to.
It's funny, yeah. No, you're absolutely right, because when I think lifestyle business, what I do very much is a lifestyle business, because, and the reason I class it that is because I'm not at my desk at 8 a.m. and not leaving till 6, right? I do all the school runs, and then I go and see my mum and have breakfast or at least a coffee with her, and that's a non-negotiable.
Yeah.
And so for everyone else, it's sort of like what I've had drilled into me as well. You're running a lifestyle business, and aren't you? If you don't start work properly till like 10 o'clock, and then you're knocking off early to go and pick your kids up, and then you're working in the evenings, it's a lifestyle business. You know, you do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm not like, well, I'm probably still doing about 60 hours a week, spread out the 7 days.
Yeah.
Just I don't do it 9 to 5 or 8 till 6 sat in an office. But yeah, it's funny that. So okay, I will call it a lifestyle business.
Yeah, cool. Exactly. Yeah.
Or a boutique agency is the other one that everyone loves to say, don't they?
Yeah.
But yeah, what was the plan when you first set it up?
Yeah,
and
so
kind of how far onto that journey are you?
Yeah, I guess in reality, initially the plan was probably to step away from PLC and get up and running. And what was the plan? It was to pay our mortgage and all our associated bills and create a cash reserve, which meant we had options to scale a business. So that was kind of the loose plan. So it was get enough placements made that we could continue to do this without having to supplement the income, and then from there grow it with headcount. So, but it wasn't a 5-year we've got to get to 50 people across 4 locations. Like it was an anti that plan, if I'm really honest, because that I didn't see the value of that previously.
That's interesting. Okay, fine. So it was like literally as long as the bases are covered, we're good.
Yeah, keep lights on. Yeah, well, initially that was year 1 plan.
And where is it now then in terms of like what's the plan now? Is that still the approach? Is that still the mentality?
It's really difficult, and it's a really good question. We're in that kind of next 3 to 5 year planning stage now, because that takes us through to year 10 and beyond. And it's on my agenda a little bit as well, because I'm early 40s, and you suddenly start thinking about, well, okay, how long are you going to stay in the industry? What does 15 years look like? All that type of good stuff.
What do I want to be doing? Yeah.
And yeah, I suppose and it kind of probably sounds quite negative again. You've got to work back sometimes from what don't we want, and what I don't want to do is drop the ball. So I don't want to take such a degree of risk that the service level and the brand is diluted.
Right. Yeah.
I don't want
to compromise on the actual core values of the business in terms of how you guys operate, just to hit targets and numbers.
Because I think you can take quality delivery backwards whilst taking turnover and headcount forwards.
Agreed. Yeah, absolutely. And
that's what I don't want to do. We'll kind of probably have to scale by virtue that repeat work, if it continues to grow, it starts to hit an exponential type point, because people who've been referred start to refer. And how we service that, there's a few different options as to whether you start to bring more resources in, whether you start to bring fully fledged consultants in, somewhere in between. We've got a somewhere in between model now, which works really well. And it's that whole kind of, at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people, you can probably still top and tail every deal. And you're still involved in every deal. You're still absolutely aware of every client. You've probably met every client, give or take. And it's at what point do you want to let go of that? Or do we continue at, okay, we're going to get to 10 headcount, and we're super cool with that. And that's what we'll always be. And then we'll select work based on capacity.
I suppose, yeah. No, it makes sense. Are you still actively on the tools? Are you running a desk, actively making recruitment placements and that kind of thing?
100%, yeah. And I'll always do that. I absolutely.
Really, I was just about to ask that. How long do you think that will carry?
I think I'm a lifer for that. So I think one of the things that I found frustrating about PLC was the further away I got from client and candidate interaction, the less I enjoyed it, to the point where I was almost like, I'm not even sure I enjoy the industry anymore. And getting back on the tools, I genuinely kind of fell back in love with it again. I really enjoy meeting businesses. I really enjoy understanding where they're going. We're lucky in finance because you do get to meet MDs and FDs, so you get good understanding. Loads
proper decision makers, aren't you?
Yeah, it's cool, and you get to have conversations around this type of chat, how are you going to scale it? Where do you want to get to with it? Why do you want to get there with it? And you can have quite an open conversation and this type of conversation. And I quite like delivering from. Like,
how important do you think it is then to still be on the tools?
I think it depends on what you want to do with it. Like at some point, if you do want to scale it, you want to go multi-office, and potentially if you want to move away from bootstrap perhaps, and you really want to supercharge it with some external investment, you probably got to get out your own way and get off the tools. And you've got to pass those relationships down, and you've got to do your very best to make sure you distribute those relationships properly.
Because they call it you're sort of CEOing your business, right? You've got to be able to, like, your business has got to run without you.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. Okay. And is that ever the plan in that sense? And do you know what I mean? Like, because it's funny, everything you're saying, not everything you're saying, a lot of the things you're saying are certainly around being on the tools still and that kind of thing, is almost the polar opposite of like what I believe, in my mind, to be a sort of success in a business, right? Mm-hmm. My thing was always, I want to recruit as long as I have to, and then get off and sort of entrust that to teams and people to do that for me, so that I can play golf and nip into the office every now and then, check on things. How's it going? That kind of thing. Because in my mind, that was I've made it, I've done it. So it's interesting. So for me to hear, like, but then is it down to the fact that you still enjoy it?
I think I like it, which makes it easier. And so I think some people scale it to get away from it. You even see that at managing consultant level, where there are some people in the industry who don't really like doing the job or don't like the pressures of the targets and all that type of stuff. So almost getting to managing consultant level, they can go, well, I'll just outsource that pressure.
That's a sales thing, Sales businesses run like that. They reward salespeople with promotions further away from sales. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh, you've done really, really well. You've hit all your sales targets. We're going to make you a manager. Oh, you've done really, really well as a manager. Your salespeople are hitting targets. That's going to make you a sales director. And your reward for being a good salesperson over time is to get you further away from sales.
Totally.
I think it was a podcast with Benjamin Dennehy where he mentioned that. I was like, yeah, you're fucking right. Yeah, that always seems to be we don't ever go, okay, who's the best manager of my 10 salespeople? Who's the best person that looks like they can motivate and lead the team? We go for the best salesperson and put that person in the position of management and take them away from sales, and then keep doing that, right? Which brings me on to one of the questions I know I asked you already, and I want to ask you on air. Recruitment. Today, is it a sales job still? Do you operate your recruitment agency as a sales business?
Yeah, and you'll get a whole host of answers this way. So for me, I think really...
Oh, this is the bit where Gary Goldsmith will start commenting and be like, shut the fuck up. Like, what do you like?
He was hating on it. So I think it was... when I joined the industry, I would say it was a sales job. It was my view of it. I think it was very close touch, go and pitch. Get in front of as many people as you can and pitch them. Mm-hmm. And rightly or wrongly, I think that was kind of where the industry was. I would say it's probably morphed its way through, partly because of client expectations now, and partly because of social media and the level of reach you can get through the likes of LinkedIn and all the other socials and all that type of stuff, into somewhere between a sales and marketing role. Mm-hmm. I think if you get the marketing wrong now, it's really hard to be elite.
Yeah, it's hard to rectify it as well.
Yeah. It's exactly, because it takes time. As you'll know, it takes time to build that audience. It takes time to understand the tone of voice. It takes time for them to realise that you are being authentic, and to find your authentic tone and all that type of stuff. So yeah,
the
rubbish
marketing
answer,
is
somewhere
where the
between.
value comes from, right? Which is what our talent acquisition partners will say to us, right? Mm-hmm. I work with agencies, I'll refer you back to the RecFest podcast that I did, where there was 4 industry leading TA leaders all saying the same thing. We like agency. We want to work with agency. We see the value that agencies provide. Build a relationship with us. Give us some value, guys. Give us something that we can use in our business that's useful. You guys speak to hundreds of candidates a day. Find out what's going on in the market and tell us. We don't speak to that many people, certainly in a specific niche. You're speaking to industry leaders. You're speaking to our competitors. Tell us what's going on out there. Work with us and we can do something. If you're just going to spec to our line managers and spec to us every chance you get and only talk to us when there's a vacancy that you want a bit of action on, come on. Like, do you know what I mean? It's a bit like, it's a very one-way relationship.
And I think, so people have asked me this a load of times, like, what's the product? And if someone would say, well, our product is a candidate, or in a really strong market, our product is a vacancy. And I would say neither. I think the current product is insights. And I think if you can go and share insights, particularly with TA, where they can then they'll make no bones about it and say, look, John, I need this information. And absolutely, I'm going to go make myself look good by sharing it firsthand with our stakeholders in-house. Those insights are valuable, and you need to be that window to the market. And same
our
for
industry
candidates.
is really slow moving with this sort of stuff, right? 10 years ago, data and insights is the new currency. That was the buzz. You know, data is currency. Insights and data, that's the new currency. Almost every other industry seemed to follow suit with that. You know, pharma, tech, or all of them did that. We didn't. And now we seem to almost finally be wising up to the fact that, hang on a minute, my clients aren't the product, and nor are my candidates, really. My product is me as an agency, and what insights and what value that I can deliver to, you know, my prospect audience and the people who are involved in the cycle. It's a complicated cycle. It's a very easy job, of course, but it's a complicated sort of sales cycle, if you can call it a sales cycle, right? Because you've got a vacancy, you've got people involved, you've got decision makers. It's all very layered. But the value that stands me, because again, if I'm TA in your agency, all right, what are you going to do? Oh, I'm going to advertise your job. Well, I can do that. I'm going to go onto LinkedIn. Well, I can do that. Oh, you know, I'm going to go through a CV database. Well, I can do that. I can do all those things that you're saying you're going to do. So explain to me why I need to use you.
Yeah. And the positive for recruiters is, I would say, our market trends move quicker than ever before. So, you know, candidate sentiment, whereas it might have changed slowly over a 3 to 6 month period, that can ebb and flow back and forth over probably now a 2 to 3 month period. And I think similarly, you know, job vacancy and job volume, we can now track it in a month to month, almost a week to week type basis. And people need that MI. They need to understand how a salary is trending, how is candidate appetite to move trending, how are certain parts of the job market, you know, how many finance business partners roles are coming to the market versus FC roles, and. I'm
going to give them a shout out. I was with Wave over the summer. Have you heard of Wave?
Yeah.
Dave Jenkins and their crew. And they not stumbled on something. They were kind of always looking for these insights. But I was sort of like, this is like mega valuable information for talent acquisition teams, right? Their Wave Tracker multi-poster tool looks at engagement levels and stuff on vacancies that are posted to what job boards, but it not only recommends what job board to post your job advert to based on application rates and stuff, but actually what time of day and when in the week you should post it. We're ex-PLC. It was always core hours of BD time. Do not post adverts. Don't do admin during that time. You post your adverts in the evening or on a Friday afternoon, right? And those 2 times are the least engaged times where candidates apply. And it's like, that's so fucking valuable. That in itself is gold. And what a brilliant way to open up a relationship with talent acquisition than to say, actually, do you know what? This information that we have could be really vital to you guys. If you're just frustrated with the lack of applications, I'm not even saying let me recruit for you. All I'm going to say to you is, listen, for these sorts of roles, did you know that Tuesday afternoons are the best time to post? No, I didn't know that. There you go. Now go and tell your HRD. Go and tell everyone else that you've got this information. And when they go, where did you find that out from? This boutique lifestyle agency in Coventry told me about it. Well, that's interesting because we've got all these big agencies on our PSL and not a single one of them has ever told us that.
Definitely, and I think also it's just about going back to the point about honesty. It's bowling up to TA and not feeling in competition with them, not feeling like they're a gatekeeper, and just having an open conversation. To say, what do you want? Like, what makes your life easier? How can I slot into the framework to help you out? Rather than either trying to get round the side of them or to beg a job off them. It's just kind of going, well, can I help you out? The information's free. I've got it anyway, and if it doesn't come to anything, it probably comes to a referral, even if they don't use you, because it just does. Because people tend to want to do a solid back.
But this is it, right? I said this when we was having a beer, right? Like, just like we as agency owners are in a multitude of different WhatsApp groups with different leaders and all the rest of it, right? And we get often asked, does anyone know anyone like this? Is anyone looking for someone like this? That kind of thing. TA have the same thing. They're in multiple WhatsApp groups and they're in multiple Slack groups. And if you've given a new TA relationship that you're trying to build, a nugget of information that they found potentially a little bit useful, they're going to feel like $1 million whacking that in the WhatsApp group and going, guys, does anybody recruit for, welders and engineers? Because we've just had some insight that tells us that Tuesday afternoons are the best time to post your job vacancies. Give it a go. Makes them look $1 million to their peers. Where did you find that information out from? this chap here, he was really good. He was really insightful, blah, blah, blah. We're not using any additional agencies. We're on a recruitment freeze. We're on. But he sounded like a decent guy. And actually, he actively said, listen, if there's anyone that you know in your network that could use an agency like us, could you please give us a shout? Because, we're all just trying to make a living.
Totally. And I think by sharing those insights, and provided they've got validity, you then build some trust, and trust then leads to people having an appetite to buy, and so on and so forth. And that roundabout just keeps on coming.
And that's a lot more fun than going than your BD strategy being, hi John, are you recruiting? I specialise in accountancy and finance recruitment, 40k plus, qualified. Are you recruiting at the moment? No. All right, okay. Oh no, I have a PSL. Oh, when's that off for renewal? Oh, okay, then thank you very much. Update the CRM, move on to the next one. That's a boring shit conversation to have. A more engaging conversation is to go, this is what I do, this is what I'm looking to do. I want to work with you guys. I appreciate that's not an overnight process. Let's get the ball rolling. I'm going to give you a little bit of information that I found that other people have found really useful and that your competitors are doing that maybe you didn't know about.
Definitely, and I think there's some you can take some comfort that those relationships that take the longest to open the door on. They tend to be when the door does open the most collaborative. Yeah. Because if actually you've got to know each other,
done all the hard work.
Exactly, and at that point they're kind of saying, well, actually, let's do some partnership conversation rather than here's a job, do your best on it, and if you do it well, we'll give you another one. Because it's still quite transactional when you're on the third vacancy, because you never really did any front end relationship development.
You just so happened right place, right time guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, no one wants to be the rebounder guy, right? You know what I mean? It's
exactly.
Yeah, it's amazing how. But again, this is for me. I'll die on this hill, right? If you run your recruitment agency as a sales business, none of this is going to make any sense to you, and you're not going to buy into any of it, and you're never going to do it because your answer is always going to be just to hit the phones harder. Well, carry on hitting the phones harder until the cash flow runs out, and no one wants to buy or invest, and then wind your business up like so many are doing,
And you've only got to look at. Like there's been some big headlines this week around the big PLCs and the slashing profits they've had and all that type of stuff because, I'm not saying they all have this, and I think there's some amazing PLCs, and I'm not anti-PLC. I think climbing the PLC ladder is a really good career strategy if it's your bag. But I think the ones that operate at that level and are inside that model, it comes to haunt you, doesn't it? Like that's the reality. It comes to haunt your profit.
Yeah. Too right. Yeah, but the thing is, there are some great PLCs out there who are accepting that model doesn't work. We need to look at alternative ways, right? I'm working a lot with, again, through RecTools and stuff. I meet some really interesting businesses and some really fascinating people. And I'm working with Bibby Financial Services. Bibby Financial Services should not be struggling to be able to chuck a ton of money at marketing to aim at targeted campaigns or put an outbound sales campaign together to hit recruitment agencies. But instead of doing that, they're sitting down with the likes of myself and the REC and APSCO and going, guys, what you guys are on you have your audiences and stuff. What can we do? Can we collaboratively put together some more micro nurturing events where we answer some questions and it becomes a round table and it's a bit of an open forum? That's what we want to do. We want to have that boutique approach and localized approach to our potential customer base, because actually, yes, we would sign up more people by doing an aggressive outbound campaign, but the relationships that we build and the people that we win over on using a more effective kind of value add method are going to be far deeper than just people who are rate searching. Oh yeah, go on then, I'll look at you. What are you charging? My invoice finance company charges me X. What are you paying?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It becomes a race to the bottom. And I think that's where we are as an industry. You hit the nail on the head that consumers are so much more aware now, and how we buy has completely changed. And the recruitment agencies that have almost either organically accepted that or have actively gone out their way to kind of amend their processes are the ones that are doing well right now.
Definitely. And I think another part of the puzzle a little bit is those businesses that really do chase headcount and bats that point around kind of adding bums on seats and all that type of stuff is, I'm amazed at how many of them, the level of working capital they'll operate on, and some of them will have 1 month in the bank. And that's why you see these big ebbs and flows in headcount, because they've not been pragmatic enough to hold any reserves. They've been, super seat of their pants type operational model. Yeah. And then when job flow drops off, they haven't even got 8 weeks to turn it around, and they're suddenly having to let people go and doing these big culls and all that type of good stuff. And I think when you're a little bit calmer and a bit potentially more boutique in your approach, it means you can ride the wave of a tough quarter, which means everyone's under less pressure, which means everybody can operate in a bit more of an honest way.
And these things aren't forgotten about. Right? I know of an agency who, recently in the last 6 months, went through a recruitment drive to land and expand in the US, hired 6 consultants to go out to the US. These people had sold houses, relocated families, said bye to their friends, landed out in the States, and 6 weeks later were let go and told to go back.
Wow.
6 weeks. And it's like, if you haven't got the financial runway to get these people hired and landed out there for 3 months minimum, you're giving them 6 weeks to hit the ground running, and it didn't work, and then you've told them all sorry, but, you got to go home.
I think a lot of customers, clients and candidates would be surprised at how many recruitment businesses operate with a very limited cash burn to be able to get through before they got to make a placement. And that leads to really poor decision making. It's much harder to be honest when you're doing that.
That's where we were. As a business, that's where we were.
Right.
We did all the wrong things. We grew too quickly. We, leveraged debt and, weren't able to then service that debt, so then took on more debt, and that made it even more unserviceable. We went and had conversations in the investment model and that kind of thing because we were that in the shit. Our answer was always, well, if you hire more people, they'll build more. Everything that we shouldn't have done. Those were because we didn't know any better. It was like, no, that's what, because when you're in the trenches and like I said, if you're playing around in mud, you're going to get dirty, right? And everyone else around you was dirty. And the circles that we were in and the people that we were looking to as like role models of like, they've got it right. They all followed the same suit. So we were kind of like, we can't be doing that bad if theirs is the same and theirs is the same. And then lo and behold, like, you go further into it and you're like, oh, that guy shut down, these guys shut down, they shut down, and they ended up sacking half their staff. And you're like, oh, crap, okay. The blueprint that we were following is sort of like the wrong one.
And the flip side is, I don't think it necessarily is hard and fast. I don't think it's the wrong one, because I think you can absolutely go and raise finance or bootstrap it and go really fast and really hard and have an exit strategy at the end of it all.
But look at the stats though. How many recruitment businesses have a successful exit?
Yeah, is it 3% that get sold at point of journey?
Less than 3, right? How many recruitment agencies take on investment and get sold as part of a portfolio? About 20-25%. That still means 75% of them didn't and then end up failing, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of horror stories out there. And I'm not against the whole VCPE back thing. I just think you've got to go back to that starting point. Like, what do you want from this? Do you want to build something, grow, scale, exit, and get the fuck out of there? Then go in with that mentality and have that as your blueprint, right? But you can't kind of go in and sort of, maybe we'll do this, maybe we'll do that, and sort of wishy-washy half-arse it, because it's people's lives you're playing with. Hiring people to fire them in 6 weeks' time because, oh shit, we made a mistake, that's not right.
I think you've got to be honest whether you fancy it as well. And what I mean by that is, I found myself in a situation where I loved the jobs board in the morning talking about the vacancies, the businesses we were working with. I loved the one-to-ones with the recruiters where we were talking about what's our strategy, what we're doing tactically to improve our performance. But you'd find yourself looking at kind of rent and rates and leases on office blocks in places you've never been to, and that whole like kind of the business administration bit of it, or looking at IT and CRM, exactly, and all that type of operational infrastructure, and you're kind of thinking, well, I can do it, but do I love it? Do I feel like I'm adding value? Do I want to go home and talk to my missus about it? Not really. No. So you kind of get through the door and you're kind of like, well, I don't really want to talk about work, and I've never been like that. I'm quite excitable about work.
It's funny you say, I specifically remember the conversation that me and my business partner had when it was just the two of us. And he was like, I want to grow, I want to scale, I want to hire staff, I want to get a bigger office space. And I was like, I don't want to do any of that. I just don't, that does not excite me in the least. And fundamentally, I think that was the point where we probably should have gone, all right, well, best of luck to you. You go and do it your way. I'm going to go and do this instead.
Yeah.
But we didn't. And we compromised to an extent and scaled back the growth plans in line with what I was kind of happy to, okay, well, if it's that size, and that's like, I can deal with that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then neither of us kind of go and have what we want. And I think that's really key, is to be honest with, if you've got a business partner, be honest with your business partner, but also if you be honest with yourself, like, forget all the noise, forget everything else for a minute, and actually ask yourself, like, do you actually want to, because for me, the concept and thought process of, I have to be in the office by such and such a time because I've got staff that will be looking to me for answers. I have to be in the office until this time because I've got staff that will be looking at me as, oh, he just comes and goes as he pleases, that kind of thing. You know, and feeling like I was completing a to-do list that I just didn't, it weren't even my to-do list. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That, I hated that. And I'd never put myself back in that situation. But at the time, I wasn't honest with myself. I was sort of like, actually, maybe I'm just being lazy. You know what I mean? Or lacking ambition.
And I think you see quite a lot of dual partnership startups, and you get this kind of where the two of them will sit down and say, well, I'll stay on the tools and I'll do the day-to-day sales floor management, and you do that kind of business management, the back office. And the problem with those two jobs is it's really hard to get the balance, because that's probably a 60-hour-a-week job, and that's probably a 25-hour-a-week job. And so it's kind of like, what are we going to do with you for the other, and how are we going to make sure exactly? I think it's really hard to get dynamic.
Exactly the situation at the minute with a two-person startup that I mentor. Exactly that. They're agreeing. He was like, he's going to do. I'm on commercial, and he's going to do all the admin stuff. And then no less than 3 weeks later, he was on the phone to me, like really fucking pissed off with him.
Totally.
Like, he's not doing anything. Well, but that was the agreement, guys. Like, that was what you guys set out as. You enjoyed the sales. He enjoys reading through contracts. Do you know what I mean? Like, you now can't get annoyed with each other about this. It's your business. You set this up together.
And all of that niggling and all of that discontent and so on and so forth, at the bottom end of that, if you play that all the way through to client and candidate service and quality,
they pick up on it.
It gets eroded, because they just haven't got your full attention.
No. Too right. So what's going on with you guys at the minute then? How do you guys reach out to you? Your accountancy and finance recruitment, is that UK-wide? Are we looking Europe and beyond?
Yeah, UK-wide. So we do kind of two sides of the business. So we do a whole host of multi-site stuff. So large businesses that are perhaps manufacture or retail, where they've got a number of finance pocket teams around the UK, and they want one point of contact where they don't have to keep explaining themselves over and over again. And then the other side is our SME market. In reality, is kind of the triangle of Manchester to Leeds to Nottingham.
Right. Okay.
So that kind of northern triangle, northern band. And qualified finance typically. So sort of 40 to 120k level.
Are you guys hiring at the minute? If there's any recruiters that are in accountancy and finance that want to throw their CV over to you?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, 100%. So we, as I say, we're kind of finding that the level of referral business and the level of business traction we're getting now, that there's space. But it's got to be somebody advising. 100% always worth a conversation. Without a doubt.
Okay, cool. And what about rec to rec? Do you want them to reach out or tell them? No agencies.
I think no, it's not a no agency model, because I think that's too narrow-minded. But I've got a good network of rec to recs.
Good.
And people know me and all that type of good stuff.
So hey, if they've got something valuable to tell you, by all means, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Insights are useful.
But appreciate this. This has been really good, really insightful. Wish you genuinely the best of luck. Really kind of looking forward to how the next few years play out for you. And no doubt we'll do this again at some point.
Cracking.
Thank you if you're still listening. Thank you very much for watching, listening, subscribing, and all the rest of it. We shall see you again next week. That's all for us for now. Mate, appreciate this.
Thanks a lot.